But first, we have even more breaking developments from just moments ago. We're now learning a high-stakes phone call between President Trump and Russian President Vladimir Putin lasted for over 2 hours, and the president is now expected to have another phone call, this time with Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky. Now, the talks today are just the latest attempt at peace for the two countries since both sides met face-to-face last week. That sit-down failed to produce any results. So let's go live now to the White House and CBS News senior White House and political correspondent Ed O'Keefe. Ed, what are we learning about this phone call so far? It just ended, right?
Well, at least the Russian portion appears to be over, Elizabeth, and we have to cite a Russian news agency here called TASS, which says that Russia favors, that Putin said that Russia favors a peaceful resolution of the Ukraine crisis. The Associated Press is citing Putin saying that the call with President Trump lasted 2.5 hours. Here at the White House, they have not yet confirmed or verified that to CBS News directly. We're going to be here in a little standby mode for you, I think, over the course of this hour as we get a little more detail. He was scheduled to speak this morning with the Russian leader, then the Ukrainian leader, although the order of that is still also uncertain. Also uncertain if he got the two of them to talk together on the phone. Did he merge the call, as you might be able to do, so to speak? And then we don't know, was there any definitive agreement to meet in person, or are they sending this back to underlings to continue sorting out details, which in essence is maintaining status quo. Russia has always said they're willing to end this if Ukraine meets their conditions. Ukraine has always said they're willing to end this if Russia gets out of Ukraine. And so the stalemate hasn't been broken yet. The president, frustrated and unwilling to fulfill his campaign promise of ending this early in his administration, once again engaging in it directly after telling reporters last week while in the Middle East that the only way to resolve this might be to get him and Vladimir Putin face-to-face to talk it out.
So are either party open to that? Does Putin want to meet face-to-face? Does Trump?
Trump has certainly signaled over the course of his young presidency that if that's what it takes, he's willing to do it. Putin probably would be fine doing that as well because he wants that legitimacy or that sort of co-equal nature of an engagement with the American president, one that previous administrations have argued they don't necessarily deserve. Despite having a large nuclear arsenal, they don't have an economy that dominates the world. They don't necessarily, and a very large military, but there's no other real reason geopolitically unless Russia is causing conflict, as it is in this case. So we'll wait and hear for more details, and literally it requires hitting refresh on his Truth Social account and watching for confirmation from White House officials, which has not yet come, meaning they're probably trying to button things up and either do it directly through the president's social media channel or in some more fulsome statement summarizing not just the engagement with the Russians, but also Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, who just yesterday happened to run into the vice president and the Vatican for the installment mass of Pope Leo. The two of them appeared to have a more cordial exchange this time than that infamous one a few months ago in the Oval Office where they started yelling at each other.
Right. And I'm curious, Ed, I know you're going to have to be checking your phone every 2 seconds to say if there's any kind of update. But, on the Russian front, we know that Russia is beefing up its bases near Finland, that latest country to join NATO. Has the White House said anything about that, what it plans to do to potentially thwart any future Russian military action in its neighboring countries? I mean, a lot of what goes into the ceasefire is going to have long-term ramifications for Europe and potentially the rest of the world.
Yeah, this is why Europe has been so concerned about this. That what's going to stop, or is he going to stop at Ukraine? They've feared that's unlikely. Finland has an 800-mile-plus border with Russia, the longest of any country in Europe, and is a more recent NATO member, remember. One of the big foreign policy accomplishments of the last administration was getting Finland and Sweden included, and them being so close to Russia was seen as a really big deal, that they were willing to do it, and that it meant now a collective defense posture for those two countries and their proximity to Russia. So, yes, this is exactly what all European countries have feared, that there would be buildups in other parts of the line between Russia and Western Europe, in essence, that there would be conventional military buildup, plus all the other things that Russia can do in the cyberspace, economically and whatnot, which is why you've seen them gathered again in recent days with Zelensky, with each other in different meetings, trying to get all these countries to impose stiffer sanctions, get the United States on board, and make sure that President Trump stays on their side of this, at least publicly, and continues to support Zelensky as he has over the last 2 weeks or so, at least, as we've seen a sort of change in tone.
And we can't forget that China is going to be watching what ends up from this ceasefire, this agreement as well, in terms of what they may or may not do for Taiwan. Has that been a part of the conversation at all during some of these press briefings?
During press briefings, sure. Unclear if it was part of the conversation today between the leaders. I can read you a little more here that we've just gotten. Apparently, Putin came out and spoke with reporters after finishing his conversation with President Trump, and he just said it had lasted more than 2 hours, that he called it frank and meaningful, and he thanked Trump for his support for the resumption of direct negotiations between Moscow and Kyiv. Well, some would say that was supposed to happen last week, not this week after this call, but it shows you how Putin is trying to pull Trump into these conversations. Trump, according to Putin, expressed his position on the ceasefire and the conversation and noted that Russia is in favor of a peaceful resolution of the crisis in Ukraine. They're apparently working on some memorandums of understanding between Russia and Ukraine that may include issues of ceasefire and principles of settlement. That means there's still paperwork to do. That means we're probably weeks away from a resolution. No definitive end to it today, and so far at least, no sign that there are plans for the two leaders to meet.
Okay. All right, Ed O'Keefe, I know you're going to be checking your phone for the next day. Thank you so much for that update. Always great to talk to you.